Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 49. And this week is a really, really special week. And why this is special is because I have my very first guest on the podcast with me today. And I'm so excited to get into this conversation and share it with all of you who have been regular listeners or new listeners, wherever you're located. So, really, I just want to introduce Lisa, and Lisa is going to chat to me for however long we get together about her gorgeous dog, Duck, who died last year on Christmas Eve. So she's going to talk to us about the amazing relationship she shared with Duck. And Lisa, welcome. How are you?
So much. Thanks for having me. I'm good, thank you.
That's great. So let's go back to kind of the very beginning. And if you were to reflect on the first time that you met Duck and what your initial impressions were, and how did the bond kind of begin between the two of you? We'd love to know.
Yeah, so I suppose I've always had animals in my life, growing up, particularly dogs, a lot of them. Um, but between one thing and another, you know, it was always sort of they were family pets. I never had my own dog in my own home, living away from home. So when I moved home from London, I was on a career break. I moved home from London. I sort of said, now's the time. So I moved home in 2019 and I went back to work in September 2019 as a school teacher. And sort of, I had to sort of settle back into that. And sort of from November onwards, I started looking and I knew in my head I wanted to rescue a dog. There are just so many gorgeous animals out there in rescues. And I knew that that was something I wanted to do. So sort of from November, I would kind of tip up to the DSPCA and sort of, look around and, I expressed my interest. And at that point, there was so many puppies, and I sort of had heard about lurchers and all of the neglect and everything that they went through. And, there's obviously so many breeds of dogs, but at the time in 2019, it was in particular, there was just a lot of lurchers up there. And I had it in my head that I wanted to rescue a dog that maybe not every single person buy and go, oh, let's go and look at that one. So I I was kind of looking a lot. There was a lot of puppies coming up to Christmas, and I knew that they'd all get wonderful homes. And I just went up in January, and I'd been talking to the girls there in early January about what I was looking for. And I wasn't being sort of too picky
Mm.
or like too prescriptive, is more what I should say.
Mhm.
And they sort of said to me, listen, we've just had this dog come over from they have a unit that you can't go and view the dogs where obviously they're under healthcare or whatever. She goes, he's been with us for a few months over there and he literally's just moved in today and his name is Duck. And I said, oh, I was wandering down there and he actually caught my eye. And they said, listen, I know he's a bit bigger than what you sort of said. He was a very large lurcher and I'd spotted him and he was a very hairy lurcher and he'd had something on his leg and anyway in a cone. And she was like, do you want to meet him? And I was like, yeah. And the second she took him out, he was just so quiet and gentle. And he just brought this sort of calmness over me. And she was like, listen, do you want to take him for a bit of a walk there? He's still not fully healed. Um, he'd come in as part of an accident or something. They didn't really know what happened to him. Someone found him wandering around and he'd had his whole left leg basically had been degloved, which means that the skin had been pulled off.
Oh,
So whether it got
God.
caught in something or it was done purposely, and he had burns on his belly as well. So they had to do a whole skin graft, and he'd been in isolation and not with other dogs for several months, and they didn't know even at that point what he was like with dogs. So other dogs, and that was something that was going to be kind of important. So I said, listen, I'll take him on a little walk. And as soon as I just took him on a walk, I just kind of he brought this kind of calmness over me. And I sort of was like, right. I was like, I'm really, really interested. And I filled out the paperwork. And they said, listen, like, you're more than welcome. That was quite late. Like, they were closing at 4. So they were like, you can come up and spend some more time with them next week if you want. So I did. And I just fell in love with him. I spent time with him outside and time with him in his kennel. And I knew straight away that I wanted him. And He'd been moved over to adoption, but actually he hadn't been signed off by the vets and he hadn't been neutered yet.
Mhm.
So from that point, that was, kind of third week in January. I then went up and collected him on the 6th of February, 2020.
Mhm.
So I'd started sort of putting feelers out in 2019. And I just knew, like, I don't know, I just felt that it was the right thing to do. And I didn't have any doubts. And I live by myself. So this was going to be, he's going to be an incredibly big part of my life. And yeah, at that point, we checked how he was with dogs of different sizes because my parents have a very small dog and needed to be able for them to interact with one another. And he was the most docile dog ever. He never barked in his lifetime. The only thing he got a bit sort of head up about was cats. But I think most
Oh,
creatures are kind of like that
yeah,
anyway.
they are.
So yeah, cats and squirrels. And yeah, so that's sort of how I came across Duck, and he'd had the name Duck, and I decided to keep it. And over time, I gradually found out where that came from. And
Oh, there's
but
a
it
story
wasn't,
there.
yeah, it wasn't until his last year of life. So like, I would regularly go to the DSPCA. Even when I had him, I'd buy the food up there, and he went to daycare there until sort of the last year of his life. And I was buying his food, and they give the name of the dog for the Grub Club or whatever. And I'm a monthly supporter, so I said, oh yes, under Duck or whatever. And there was this lady just chatting. She was from Rehoming, I think, and I hadn't seen her before. And she goes, Duck, and she goes, I'm nearly certain I named that dog. She goes, is he like a deerhound cross? And I said, yeah. And she goes, I gave him that name. So apparently they have a thing up there that whoever is on the day that the dog comes in the van, that person names the dog. And she said that she had to clean his wounds and it smelt like toilet duck, whatever she was using, and that's where the name came from.
Oh my God.
So I didn't find that out until the year he passed away. So I always thought it was maybe because he likes water or that he's got a long snout or I don't know. But yeah, that stuck. And like I knew he was going to be, I've always had this bond with an animal. I've always felt more comfortable around animals than humans.
Mm.
Um, I've just felt I can be 100% myself. And I've always sort of struggled with anxiety and self-esteem and things like that. And Duck he changed my life in so many ways. And obviously the timing of it was just pre-COVID. So we spent lockdown in our little bubble. And my family are not from Dublin, so I live in Dublin, and we spent lockdown in our little bubble. And I was so happy during lockdown in that little bubble. Um, so I suppose I knew he was going to be very important to me when I adopted him, but I just didn't realize how important and
Mm.
the change that he would bring about, just in my views on life and the world in general.
Mhm.
So yeah, was and still is a very, very important part of my life.
Mm.
Um, and I suppose getting to the whole point, obviously he's no longer here. Like the loss of Duck impacted me massively. Um, and listening to other people's stories really, really helped me. And I was actually directed towards your page. I remember 2 days after I'd put to sleep, I just didn't know what to do with myself. And I had a page for him on Instagram. And I just sort of put out there that I didn't know what to do. And did anyone have any sort of anything, any advice, anything at all? And I remember two people sent me the name of your page. And I found immense comfort in that, in listening to your podcasts and going onto your page and the journal prompts. And um, I still like continue to listen to your podcast. It's not that I'm not still grieving. I
Mm.
still am. I don't think I'll ever, it changes, I suppose,
Mhm.
but I don't think it'll ever not be something that I think about every single day. Um, and I suppose, like in the world that we live in, like humans and animals are seen very differently. I think we're becoming more educated in how sentient they are, but I think not everyone forms that attachment with an animal, and they sometimes, see it as something lesser. But in my case, like, I've experienced human loss, like the loss of Duck, not just the circumstances, but just, yeah, I find that the most challenging thing to deal with. And I have experienced, a lot of human loss in my life. And this was in a totally different category.
Mm.
And I think an element of that is down to, not everyone in your life is going to understand it. And I'm very accepting of that. But, there's sort of that attitude, we'll give you a couple of days and then you should be grand.
Mhm.
And a lack of sort of understanding around it. And I think through Duck's Instagram page, I actually found a community of people that get it. And I do have some people in my life that get it, and I'm very blessed, and I've really had great support. But I actually found great comfort and knowledge in the people that I have connected with, like yourself, who I've never met in person, um, through that Instagram page. And I
Mm.
really, really, really feel that I would be, at a massive disadvantage and probably very different, maybe somewhere different in
Mhm.
the way I think and process things around Duck's loss if I didn't have that page. And
Mm.
it's, you know, yeah, it's just as a community of people on there, like-minded people that get it.
Mhm.
Um,
And
so
that's
yeah,
the thing, yeah. And that's the thing, like sometimes it can be like finding a needle in a haystack for people that are trying to find that connection or find that support.
yeah,
And the way that you've maybe connected with people on Duck's page that get
yeah,
it, that kind of, understand because they might have been through something similar
yeah,
at one point in their life. And like you say, like you might still listen to my episodes or other podcasts about pet loss because
yeah,
grief, it doesn't end. We have to learn how to grow with it as life goes on. Even when we get new pets, even for myself, when I foster greyhounds and things, like
yeah,
I still have to process a lot of stuff. And when you were mentioning about the timing of when Duck came into your life, I was like, what a blessing,
yeah.
honestly, because none of us knew what was coming. None of
No,
us knew that we had to lock ourselves down in our
and
houses. But
I would have been here. I'd have been in my house by myself,
yeah.
and I think it gave me time to bond with him on a deeper level that I wouldn't have had
Hmm.
if I had been in work regularly. And yeah, I got quite happy in my little bubble with him. And we saw people, like, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I don't know. It taught me a lot about. He taught me a lot, and losing him has also taught me a lot about how I view life and what
Mm.
I really think about certain things. And my priorities. He taught me a lot about that. And Duck became unwell sort of about, I started noticing little things about a year before he passed away.
Hmm.
And that year of his life taught me a lot as well. Um, you know, like, everyone's pet past, it doesn't matter how, I think, obviously there can be, the circumstances can be different, and that can definitely impact sort of
Hmm.
the way you process it and the different elements. But that last year as well taught me a lot about my priorities and people that I suppose warranted my time and energy.
Hmm.
Um, and
Assessing your inner circle, basically. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
like it took a long time to sort of get there. Like, basically, you know, Duck didn't have any pet insurance because at the time when I adopted him in Ireland in 2020, if a dog was aged over the age of 6, which he was, put down as 6/7 by the DSPCA, and you couldn't prove that the dog had previously been insured, nowhere in Ireland would insure you. So, through the last year of his life, it became apparent, I sort of started noticing his hind legs just a little bit more bent, and I started Googling all kinds of things, and straight away degenerative myelopathy came up, and I was going, oh my goodness, no, like, it couldn't possibly be this. Went to the vet. No, it's probably just arthritis. We did injections every week for a month. that brought us into February. And I just remember he was due to go in just to have a dental, and there was like a little sort of wart on the inside of one of his paws. And I
Mhm.
sort of said to myself, to the vet, I said, I really, she said, he's going to have to be like bandaged for a few weeks. And I said, I think his hind legs have gotten worse. Like, I just think if we had to put a bandage on that. And she kind of didn't really, she was like, yeah, maybe, but like, no, you're probably overreacting. I said, no, my gut's telling me no, don't do it. And within the next month, she said, listen, I can refer you for an MRI if you want, but I don't think there's any point. And I said, no, let's do the MRI. So off we went, did the MRI. The vet was like, assessed him beforehand, probably degenerative myelopathy, Lisa, like, cancer in dog spines is very, very rare. It's probably not that. There's all of these, other things it could be, but these are all very kind of exotic illnesses. It probably won't be any of those. So I get a call halfway through during his MRI to say, listen, we've found abnormalities. We've found um, what appears to be spores or growths along his spine. And it was in the part where I personally felt that I could feel something, and I don't know. But anyway, one thing led to another. They did a spinal tap. They were like, listen, it's not a meningitis.
Mhm.
And there's these other exotic blood tests you could pay to get done, but listen, don't bother. And I said, I want to do everything when we're this far. So we did those and said, listen, in the meantime, we'll start him on steroids. It's probably degenerative myelopathy. It might help with the side effects. So then I get this call from my own vet. Stop steroids, stop the steroids. It's come back. He has something called toxoplasmosis. And I'm probably getting like very medical here, so you can stop me, but I just think it's quite interesting because it's incredibly rare.
Mm.
And it's actually a parasite that animals, unless they're in the third world, don't tend to get because they usually get their puppy shots and all the rest. But, we probably think that duck came from a serious neglect and had obviously not gotten any of those things.
Mm.
And cats, it's very common in cats. Cats carry it, and cats do usually quite fine with it. And dogs usually, if they pick it up, most dogs, they're actually tested, they have it and they do fine with it. But because he obviously hadn't gotten his shots, he wasn't fine with it. This parasite latches on to any tissue that grows within the body and latches on and slowly kills it off.
Oh
So
God.
these were on his spine, and they said, "Listen, we can do the treatment, which is like 6 weeks of whatever medication. Absolutely no change during those 6 weeks. If anything got worse." And I tried holistic therapies into the summer, and then I said, "Do you know what? We've tried everything." I got another opinion from UCD. I used my Instagram page for advice, and nothing was happening. So I said, listen, we just have to try and make the best of the time. And that was sort of July when I kind of said, listen. And at that time, I was in quite a toxic work situation.
Mhm.
And I just viewed everything differently. I said, Lisa, pack that work situation in, don't go back for another year. Did that. Um, there was other situations in my personal life where I sort of said, this is not serving you. Life's too short. Pack that in. I wanted to give my time to the dog. And anyone that didn't get that, I found, it's like not everyone gets it, but if anyone was disrespectful, and I had family members who then sort of said to me, like very harshly, literally said to me, it'll be better for you now when this dog is gone because
Oh.
you're putting all your energy into this animal, and that's why you don't have a partner in life. And I remember being like, this carried on actually after the death. There was just a complete lack of understanding there. And I've sort of come to understand that, not everyone sees everything the same way, but I just think if unless you're going to say something that's going to be helpful, or if it's advice, it's different, but like that's just not advice and it's not helpful. And this was
No.
weeks before I lost the dog. So yeah, I mean, I have to look at the positives that have come out of it. But yeah, Duck couldn't attend. He couldn't go to his daycare anymore, and he was becoming, I was using his harness to bring him up the stairs and put him on the bed at night, and he slept with me for kind of most the last sort of 8 months of his life. He slept in the bed with me,
Mhm.
and then just a couple of days before Christmas, he had a fall when I was at work, and normally the camera picks it up, but it didn't. And I came back and he was struggling to get up and he was very bruised on his legs. And I just knew, right, this has to be done over Christmas.
Mhm.
And I knew one thing I wanted was I wanted him buried. I didn't want him to be cremated. And that's just something I myself just find it difficult to thought of.
Mhm.
I know they're not there anymore, it's just their body. So I suppose in one way, you know, things just got progressively worse when I went home for Christmas. And I just felt it was going to be selfish to keep him going just to have him for Christmas. So the vet had to come out on Christmas Eve and he was put to sleep. And I mean, I under the circumstances, it was probably the best situation because I'd always had the fear in the months coming up that something would happen and I'd be at home alone, not able to manage it by myself,
Mhm.
or something would physically happen and I wouldn't be able to carry him or something. And that whole thing, yeah, more very morbid. But the vet's office and what if getting him back home. My parents live in Cavan and I wanted him buried there.
Mhm.
So under the circumstances, he was at home and he could be buried, but it was incredibly difficult, and I found the process incredibly difficult. And I still, you know, I think I've kind of gotten to a place where I accepted that it was the right time now. But for about 6 months after he passed away, I kept saying, "Was it too soon?" He could have kept going, like, because he was eating and drinking and he was happy, but he
Mhm.
wasn't very mobile. And I kind of probably could have kept him going, and you know that I think I find that very difficult to 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 come to terms with.
Mhm.
Um, because obviously they just weren't he wasn't taken naturally. So I made that decision, and then like the whole process in which the vet went about it was very different to how I've heard other vets do it. So I then was
Okay.
questioning what level of pain he felt or awareness he felt. So there's all these other things that kind of come up afterwards, and I know I've heard you talk about like anticipatory grief, and
Mhm.
that entered my mind every day. The whole because I knew this was going to eventually happen,
Mhm.
but I kind of just didn't allow myself really because I said, this is just stealing joy from the time I have with him. It
Yeah.
probably would have been better for myself, but I was able to enjoy all the time I had with him. So
Mhm.
I think I was lucky in that I didn't have to go back to work in those 2 weeks because I was off for Christmas. But yeah, the physical effects. Then I was really, really, really unwell for several weeks afterwards, and it could have just been my body, just kind of I don't know, or it could have been that I was going to be sick anyway. I don't know, but
Mm.
um,
You've made that link,
yeah,
obviously. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I just wanted all I wanted to do was feel better, and yeah, it was just a whole other level of grief. And some people in my family get it, some people in my friends get it, some people don't get it, but say, "I'm just so sorry, I don't understand it, but I'm here if there's anything I can do."
Yeah.
um and yeah, I found a lot of comfort in talking to other people, hearing other people talk about their story, reading. Like, I read the book. I know you're trained in the grief recovery method, so I read that book specifically for pet loss, and I found at certain times I found that helpful. I found the writing really helpful. I found having his
Mhm.
cage really helpful because I just don't want, like, he wasn't just a dog to me. He taught me so much, so much, and he taught me how to put myself first. I think that's the main thing, which is something I've always struggled to do. And
Mm.
he sort of, I don't know, I can't really explain when it clicked with me, but that, and also just slowing down. He just always took everything in stride, just on his walk, sniff, just slow down, and just try and be calm and present in the moment. And I've always been a person that's always just going around and just, well, on to the next. And I still have those tendencies, but
Mm.
he's taught me more than any human has. And I know that I don't want to insult anyone in my life at all, but he just has taught me more about life. And yeah, but like, anyone that's going through it, like those first couple of months, I mean, I don't want to like scare you, and I still cry about it every day. I might
Mm.
just have a tear, or I might sit down and have a proper cry. Um, and but I am able to look back and sort of fondly and be happy about the times I've had with them, instead of just it always bringing up
Mhm.
sadness or anger and upset. Um, and that feeling of, I was kind of angry. I was like, didn't have enough time with him. And, you
Mhm.
know, I had him for, we had just under 4 years together. And at the time, that's not enough time, and he doesn't deserve this. And he'd been through so much in his life. Why did he have to get something that, there's no knowledge about and no treatment for? And I
The
went through
unfairness
all
of
of
it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went through all of that. And then there's also that guilt. You're like, you can't compare it to the loss of, like, say, someone who's lost a parent or a child, but that sadness and that grief is so, so strong for you that, like, yeah, you just kind of feel like sometimes you feel guilty then, because it's not socially acceptable to be going around heartbroken. I feel in our society, not a lot of people get it.
Mm.
They might accept it for a week, and then it's kind of, expected to be like, you just have to move on. And that's been said to me, and you just have to, be okay. And, I did little things I think really helped me, like all of the things I said, like, listening to other people, but like, I just wanted him to be celebrated. So like, there's pretty much a photograph of him everywhere I look in my house. And I got like a little box made, and I put all his items in it. And sometimes I would find comfort in taking the box and going through his stuff. Sometimes I wouldn't. I
Mm.
slept for the first 6 months. I had to sleep with like one of like two massive pillows sitting beside me, because I had slept with him against me, and I couldn't fall asleep without that. It's just, yeah, it's a really, like, I felt grief for the loss of pets in the past, but nothing like this.
Mm.
I feel like, and I know every person will say this, oh, my dog was really special. He was really, really special to me. And yeah, he just brought so much happiness into my life. Like, I don't think people will get just the level of happiness that he brought me
Mhm.
the time that I had him. And like, I used to tell him, like, every night I'd be like, oh, I'm so lucky to have found my ducky. So I got him in the DSPCA, and something I decided to do, and I think it's so lovely that they have it there. They have a memorial garden. So like,
Mm.
it's there's a little rainbow bridge, and there's loads of benches to sit, and there's lovely
It's
ornaments.
beautiful there. Yeah.
It's so gorgeous, and it's so peaceful. And they have this like little bridge, and like, there's different ways you can honor your pet there. But one of them is like plaques. So you pay X amount, and obviously that goes towards DSPCA. So it's such a lovely thing to do.
Mhm.
And you can have a certain amount of words engraved. So I had that phrase, "So lucky to have found my ducky," like engraved on a little plaque. Um, and it's like overlooking. It's like on the like water, and he used to love water. Any, like, if there was a puddle, he'd lie in it,
Mhm.
and he just loved water, love water. So I have that there, and every time I go up, I still cry. Um, but I go up to the DSPCA a lot.
Mm.
I I actually ended up adopting another dog from the DSPCA.
Mhm.
And I this sort of you sort of as a child, anytime a pet died, my mom never wanted to see us upset, so she just automatically would try and bring a new animal into her life, sometimes on the same day.
Oh
And
God.
I don't, yeah, like, I've always had this very, very difficult relationship with how I view death, even now as an adult, even if it's very natural and the person's 102. I just find, yeah, especially funerals, I find them very, you know, and it's something I'm very aware of and have done work on, but I still just find death, even though it's a natural thing, I find it very hard to navigate. So I think that also as a child having that kind of, I never really probably processed things properly. So
Hmm.
that knee-jerk reaction of I just want to have another animal so that the house doesn't feel quiet, or I just want to have, and I knew that wasn't the right thing. And those feelings like would come and go, but I knew it wasn't the right time. And then
How did you know that?
because of the sadness and the guilt I would feel having
Mm.
another animal that soon. And I was still too sad. And I just didn't feel ready.
Mm.
And I didn't want any new dog to be having to be constantly comparing them to Duck.
Mm.
Um, and I did adopt, and even as I was adopting, I still was like, oh my goodness, like, is this the right time?
Mm.
And I was so scared. Um, but I really, really feel that the dog I adopted him on the 28th of June. I feel like he was sent to me by Duck, and it's the only way I can put it.
Mm.
There's little things, little moments where I feel like Duck has sent him to me, and he doesn't replace Duck in any way.
Mm.
He's so different to Duck. He's another lurcher, but he's so different to Duck. Like their personalities couldn't be more dissimilar.
Yeah.
Um, but he has definitely strangely helped in the healing I feel. And it doesn't mean I don't still have sadness and grief around Duck. I absolutely do.
Mm.
But he's just brought light into my life that I really needed. Um, and I really, it's so weird. It's like I always like I really wanted, like I remember when Duck died, like for the months after, I was like, please just send me a sign. I just want a sign, because I
Mm.
started questioning all kinds of things. I was like,
Yeah.
is, as to what exists, what doesn't exist. And I didn't feel like I got those signs really. And everyone says they have these signs, and where are my signs? And then, am I asking for this? Am I looking too closely?
Mm.
But for the first month after, the first 4 weeks after I adopted Bertie, somewhere I would find a white feather. It could be at the front door, it could be inside.
Mm.
I would just find a white feather, and I started keeping them. And I sort of like to tell myself, it could be coincidence, I don't know, maybe it's just me making myself feel better, but I would tell myself, oh, those are little signs from Duck.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I saw this dog wasn't even up for adoption. I saw he was used in, I was actually on their LinkedIn to try and kind of be like, listen, here's an example. He was in awful shape. Here's an example of a dog that really needs your help, donate today or whatever. And I was just like, something just in me. I was like, oh
It's
my
a
God.
pull, a draw towards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just asked about him because I was up there every few weeks going to the garden anyway. And they were like, oh, he's in veterinary care. And then I got a call. This was like back the very start of May. And then I got a call halfway through June.
Mm.
Would you like to meet him? And I was so scared. I was so terrified to meet him because I was like, I didn't know what it would bring up in me.
Mm.
And I just, like, the girls there probably thought I was mad, but I just started bawling and crying when I met him. And I was like, am I right? Am I ready? Is it the right time? It was him and Han. And I remember I cried right before I adopted him because I was like so scared that it wasn't the right time, and I
Mm.
just wasn't sure. And then it
Ultimately,
was the right thing.
yeah.
Yeah, it was. I feel like I'm still able to process and go through this grieving process
Hmm.
while having him. And they are different dogs, they are separate. And I think that was something I was really afraid of, that it wouldn't.
If
But
they
they're,
were similar, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But it's a brand new relationship, you feel.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so, so different. And
Mm.
I was even like on the sofa beside me, I had like Duck's blanket, and I didn't want anyone sitting on the sofa beside me. So I didn't let anyone sit on the sofa
Mm.
beside me until I got Bertie. So, but I was okay with him being there on where Duck used to lie. I still don't want anyone else sitting there. It's very strange.
It's not strange at all.
but yeah, like the loss of any pet, you know, for a lot of people it's a complicated thing
Mm.
because you don't go through the same process and recognition, I think, of an animal's life as you do a human. And I understand why that is. I do.
Mm.
But to me, humans and animals are like, I just see them as equals. And I know not everyone does. And I've just always been like this as a child. And it can often make things very difficult because not everyone has that same viewpoint. But
Viewpoint. Yeah.
yeah, like, I think there's Birdie now. um, a dog that does bark. But yeah, like I just think the likes of your podcast and what you're putting time into and what you do is just so important because there is such a lack of it out there. There really is. Like when I actually started looking, especially in Ireland, like
Yeah.
we are just so far behind
Mm.
with understanding of how important animals are and the roles they play. And I don't know if it goes back historically, you know, we're obviously very a big agricultural
Nation. Yeah, we
country
are.
nation,
Yeah.
yeah. And animals are viewed, you know, as almost like, you know, and that's just and that's I'm not saying anything negative against people who view animals that way.
Mhm.
But not everyone views animals that way. And animals aren't just that to everyone. They are so much more.
Mm.
So I think it's really so valuable that you know do what you do and that these podcasts are put out there for people. And I just found it really really helped me. Like sometimes I would be like, oh, I just can't go into work, and like you can't sort of sit and hide behind a screen at a desk when you're a teacher. So I think that is
Mm.
was an element. Like I have to go in and I have to be smiling, and you know the kids don't understand, and just you have to get on with it. And I would like often listen to one of your podcasts before school, and it would
Mhm.
just help me just even go in and get out the door. And yeah, like so I just think it's great what you do. And I never really thought, is there anything like this out there until I was in the scenario where I was like, I absolutely like this
Mm.
is just so overwhelming that I do need the support. And I still do. And I, you know, I don't have people in my life checking in on me anymore about it because I think they just think I'm fine now, you know, but
Yeah.
it's so lovely to have like those podcasts to listen to or like the pay, you know, the reminders that like you put up on your Instagram, your posts and stuff like that. Like I think they'll still resonate. I don't think there'll be. I can't envisage like down the line, years down the line. I think it'll still be so important.
Mm.
But yeah, it's
Thank you.
complicated. It's a complicated thing, and for me, I knew it was going to be difficult. But I think until you're in it,
You underestimate it, don't you? How difficult it
yeah,
is. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It's very lonely place to be.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that is actually that's the best way to put it. It's very lonely.
Mm.
Because if you're lucky enough to have even one person in your circle that gets it, then you're super lucky. And I had
Mm.
some people that got it to a certain point, but like nobody that would feel it as deeply as I would, or that would ever
Mm.
have that relationship with an animal. Even, you know, my mum has is such an animal lover and she has a really, really deep love for animals. But
Mhm.
I don't think anyone would quite understand just how deeply. And then it's so nice to hear other people who have been through it and have felt it and to even just to be like it's okay, like it's totally normal, like it's acceptable because you
Mm.
just sometimes feel like what's wrong with me. And
Mm.
I'm not someone, even though I'm bawling crying the whole way through this, like I hate crying in front of people. And this is something that I've actually never been able to mask my emotions around it.
Mm. Because of
So
the intensity of it, because
yeah,
and hopefully you feel
yeah,
safe in this environment, as
yeah,
well
no, I
to
definitely
yeah.
do. And I think it's that thing of animals are so they're helpless, they're pure, and
Mm.
human beings were not. So for me, the death of an animal, they are just so pure. Dogs, especially, they just live in the moment. They're just happy creatures. They are what they are.
Mm.
There's no agenda. There's, n- and I think that is why the loss of a pet can be just so. apart from the support and love they offer us unconditionally,
Mm.
that just they just are they're just love. And I think losing that, you know, it doesn't matter what age they are, the circumstances, I think it can be incredibly
Mm.
it's different. You can't compare it to the loss of humans. It's different.
Totally different. Yeah. I have resonated with everything that you have said on this podcast. And I really feel that many people will resonate, and particularly people in Ireland who feel that this is our culture and that, we have kind of very little support even within our circles, be that family, friends, and colleagues, and things like that. And I don't know how you were able to get up and be a teacher and, put on that hat when you were grieving so much, because, like you say, if you're sitting at a desk, you can nearly just
Yeah.
go into yourself and
It
do.
actually helped me. It was weird. Like when
Mm,
I was dreading going back to work because I was like, am I just going to burst into tears in front of the kids?
mm,
Have my colleagues think, oh my goodness.
mm,
But I was actually really proud of myself and having those couple of hours where my mind was somewhat elsewhere. Like I didn't really, when you have kids looking at you, you don't really have time to think about anything else, and it's busy. So,
mm,
I did obviously find then I had nothing left to give though in the evenings,
mm,
and especially for the first couple of months. Um, but in a weird way, it like helped me and it kind of reminded me like that I was strong enough to do it. But yeah, I just remember thinking, I don't know how anyone could do this if the timing was different. I think I would have had
mm.
to take a time off work.
Yeah.
I almost feel like you can't, you know, it's not the norm to be like,
Oh
oh,
no.
I can't, people. I think there's still a stigma around it.
You always feel like you have to give a reason for
Yeah,
why you need the time off.
yeah,
So yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I think I was the timing, you know, although last Christmas I don't actually count it. I even said this is my first Christmas I duck, but technically it's not.
Technically no.
Yeah, technically it's not, but I just don't. Yeah, it's just a bit of a blur.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, like I always like I'm at a point now where I'm like, I just feel so lucky to have had him, and you know, I still don't think it was long enough, but I'm just so lucky and blessed for the time I had him because he's made such
mm,
a difference in my life.
mm.
Um,
And
yeah,
just as you say that, Lisa, a thought popped into my head to ask you. You mentioned that he obviously got you through like the lockdowns and everything
yeah.
else, in 2020. And if you were to pick like two challenges that he's helped you through in life, and then pick two of the most amazing, joyful memories you have with him, what would they be if you were to kind of,
Those
yeah,
was huge. I'll pick the joyful moments first
yeah.
because here. Um, I remember seeing him properly run and let loose and have zoomies for the very, very first time in Cavan, where
Mm,
my parents are. We have like space around our house, and he never did it. He never really did it in the dog park. He wasn't really interested in the dogs. He'd be happy enough, but he wouldn't be playful.
mm,
I just remember him feeling comfortable and just running and just being like, oh my God, like this dog is happy. Like he was just, it was just mad. And he didn't do it very often, but I do remember just that just brought me so much joy. And then there's so many different moments,
mm,
but I just remember, I suppose I can't really pick one, but something I loved doing with him was we go to Marley Park and we get a coffee and we go for a stroll.
mm.
And I just loved that. I absolutely loved it. Like
Just
we
hanging out.
just hanging out.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was like our treat during lockdown. We go those extra, it was in our 5K radius.
Mm,
And yeah, I've very, very fond memories of bringing him to Marley Park and just seeing I don't know, how far he come and just how happy he was at me. And it didn't matter. You take him off the lead and he'd still be glued to my ankle.
mm.
just how content and happy I was just being there just with him. I didn't need the company of another person. So
Mm.
just those moments in Marley Park in general, I don't think I can pick one. And then just that first time I saw him let loose and run.
Mm.
And then the challenging times, like COVID wasn't even that challenging for me because I had him here. Like I know
Mm.
that sounds awful, but one thing I will say is I actually contracted COVID before my age group got the vaccine,
Mm.
and I was really sick with it. Like struggled to go up and down the stairs, was had to be put on inhalers for a few months afterwards. Obviously, people were so good, like dropped food at the door and stuff like that. But just having him here and just having him on the bed with me, it really, really helped me. Um, I felt like he was looking after me.
Mm.
So I think health wise, that was very, very challenging. And it also, as I've expressed, like I've always suffered with anxiety. And, he also just helped me greatly with that. Um, Especially during that time when I actually contracted COVID and was like, obviously we didn't know a lot about it back then and what's the long term effects and all of that. And then, yeah, I found myself in a work situation that was incredibly challenging and stressful.
Mhm.
And I was like contemplating staying for another year because there was two particular children that I felt I was like, okay, they'll have another year in primary school and then they'll be gone and I'll be there to support them for that final year. I was a support teacher during that year. And something just got me where it was like this was July before he passed away, and I was so incredibly stressed about a situation in school. Um, I was doing something over the summer, relating to social work, and I was
Mhm.
giving my time up, and there was issues even getting what I needed for that from someone within the school, and it was very stressful. And I just remember him coming up to me when I was sitting outside. It was like really sunny, and he just came up to me and he just lay down beside me, just put his head on me. And I just remember looking
Mm.
at me like, no, that's not worth it. And I just handed him my notice
Mm.
and moved to school, and it was like the best thing ever. And I was only there like briefly, but that year was very difficult. So
Mm.
coming home to him was just amazing. And I suppose that was the year in which he got on well. And I think that also distracted me from other things.
Mm.
But yeah, like there's so many things. I also broke my ankle when I had him, and he was there beside me the whole time. Yeah, he's helped me. He was there for a lot of challenges and
Mm.
brought me calm
Mm.
in all of those and a bit of perspective as
Mm.
well.
Yes, I was about to say the word perspective and clarity and
Yeah,
decision making and
yeah,
helping to guide you in a direction that's more
yeah.
aligned for you, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, he just has made me sort of feel more self-assured in myself as well. And I don't really know what he did to do that, but it was just, you
Mm.
sometimes can't explain just how sometimes an animal can make you feel. And I try to kind of carry that with me now as well. He just taught me so, so much. Um, and yeah, I just feel I was just so, so, so lucky to get him and for him to be brought into my life.
What a beautiful relationship, though.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I just feel so, so blessed.
Yeah.
And I know every relationship is unique, and my relationship with Bertie is very different to my relationship with Duck.
Mm.
And relationship with past, family pets is also different. But yeah, like it's definitely not something to be underestimated, the grief. But I think, you know, we have to sometimes focus as well on just the time we had with them and all those
Mm.
memories. And like just to say like to people that, you know, if you're still listening, I'm still yammering on, but like one thing that really posed a challenge to me with this situation was not just the loss, but also
Mm.
the people that you have and surround yourself with, especially in that really raw time afterwards.
Mm.
And that can be very difficult to navigate, but that you just have to really mind yourself.
Mm.
And if those people, it's not to say you cut them out of your life, but if they're not uh, helping you in that time, then in that time, you just park or
Mm,
do what you have to do to navigate that, because
mm,
I don't think anyone should diminish the relationship you have with an animal or try to underestimate their worth and their life. And
oh,
yes,
completely.
there's lots of people that view animals one way and other people that have the other extreme, like myself, that view them in a much higher esteem. But I think just in those couple of weeks and months, particularly after passing, those were what I found the most difficult. And just
Mhm,
the way one day you'll view it one way and the next day you'll see it a different way, and you're constantly going back and forth with yourself. And I think it's just so important just to surround yourself with the people who will lift you up and will celebrate that animal with you.
mm,
That's what you need. Everyone's different, like, but
mm,
that's just something that I learned.
mm.
It does get easier. It changes. It changes.
It fluctuates, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm. You're
yeah.
definitely speaking my language.
That's such a strange thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I find so much comfort in just listening to other people and reading,
Mm,
and yeah, just you
mm.
do what you have to do.
To process it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I know you mentioned that you go to GSPCA and the memory garden and everything you go
yeah,
there regularly. And I was curious to know, is there any kind of other rituals or things that you do to kind of memorialize Duck, whether that's on the anniversary or birthday or anything like that you like to
yeah.
do?
So I suppose, like, it'll be the 1 year anniversary on Christmas Eve. So
Hmm.
I haven't fully thought about that. Um, and it's something I probably need to think about. I probably will go for a walk where I used to bring Duck
Mm.
at home in Cavan, because I will be at home in Cavan with my family, and I'll probably bring Bertie on that walk. And yeah, past that, I haven't really thought about that. But something I did do was I gathered all the photos I have of him, but then I also took all the photographs that anyone else had of him, and I compiled them, and I just have them all on my computer, and I actually created my own photo book. And I find that, because what's sometimes, that feeling you feel like, oh, I can't really remember what it was like to have them here.
Mm.
Sometimes having the photos and the videos on your phone, just having them in easy reach, I think that brings me
Mm.
comfort as well. Um, I also I live in Dublin. He's not buried in my garden in Dublin, but I got a little stone thing off Etsy that
Mm.
sits in the garden here, and he has the same one where he's buried in Cavan.
That's lovely.
That helps me. Um, and something I've done since he passed away is, on the sofa beside where he used to lie, there's like, I have a little table, and I have always had fresh flowers there when I'm here and a candle lit when I'm sitting there. And that's something I still do.
Mm. That's
Anytime I'm in
lovely.
that room, I have to have the candle lit.
Mm.
And I
It's
don't know,
gorgeous.
yeah, that helps me. Candles have always brought me like comfort, but
Mm.
just having it lit when I'm sitting in the room for any length of time, I'll always have it lit.
Like the light of his memory is there with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but yeah, just, feeling he celebrated it. And I think you'd only have to walk in here for 2 seconds and be like, okay, I know a dog lived here. So that helps.
Mm.
And yeah, like I kept all his things like that were his, and they were his, like, his lead and stuff. I didn't use that for Bertie. I kept that.
Mm.
Um, so I found, yeah, that like helpful as well, to actually have the box with his things, and they're his, and they'll never be anyone else's. They're just his.
Mm.
Um,
They're precious to you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, they're kind of like, they're little things, but they help me. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I
Thanks for
can't
sharing
explain the
those.
flower thing. It's just something that,
Mm.
I don't know. I just like to have something in that space, and I like it to be something that's living
Yeah.
and alive. So, um,
Mm.
that's something I've added into my grocery shop. Yeah, so
It's
all
worth
of,
it.
yeah, and then as well, like, I suppose, like, I didn't know his birthday, so I have the day that I met him in
Mm.
the SPCA in the January, and then I have the day that I adopted him. So on those days, things were still very raw because he was only gone less than a month for the first
Mm.
one, and he was only
Okay.
gone about 6 weeks. But I did write something, which I actually wrote in my journal for one of them, and then I decided I would share it with videos and photographs on his Instagram page. I find the Instagram page helps me hugely
Mm.
because I don't know, it just I feel like it keeps his memory celebrated and alive. And I know that that shouldn't matter. It's social media, but it does help me.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, all of those little things kind of help me.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I'll have to think of a way to really mark Christmas Eve. I'm really dreading it, to be quite honest, because
Mm.
I obviously want to celebrate him, but it makes me sad still thinking about that day. But I think, you know, I'll include Birdie in it in some way because I like to,
Yeah.
I do really feel like Duck put him in my path
Mm.
because he has helped as well.
And I'm
Uh,
sure he did. I really am.
yeah,
And it's just not to put too much pressure on yourself for that day. And some people prefer just to maybe mark it on a different day when they feel emotionally ready for it. It's just not to put too much pressure on yourself, even if you go for that walk. And if you had some plans in the next few weeks and you were like, look, I'm just not in a place to do it, that's okay. It's perfectly okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm.
yeah. But yeah, it's all those little things, the small things like they do help. And
Mm.
I suppose I didn't really know where to start. So like the journaling
Mm.
that, obviously you talk about that really has helped. And like I was using it a lot at the start and then sometimes I'll like leave it and then I'll come back to it. And
Drift. Yeah.
yeah, it's funny, but it's I find putting it on paper helpful rather
Mm.
than just having the thoughts going around and around, that it
Mm.
can bring some level of comfort
Yes.
and
It's
also
getting it's
looking
getting
back.
those kind of thoughts out and onto
Yeah,
paper, helping
yeah,
you to kind of relieve the pain, like, yeah.
yeah. It definitely does help. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, like I think it's like important to acknowledge like what you do is so amazing and so great because I do remember that evening like I'm St. Stephen's like I was just like, oh my God, I don't know how I can deal with this pain and I didn't know where to turn.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, at least two people sent me your thing and I followed you then. And then I was like, straight away, like I started, obviously, then I saw the podcast and it's been really, really helpful and it still is. Like, it's not like, oh, okay, 6 months, okay, a year. Like, you can't, like you say, you can't put a time frame on this.
No.
It just changes.
Hmm. And that's the thing, people will dip in and dip out of support that they find, and that's okay as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like I say to people who I chat with, that they're like, I can't believe I just found it, or the podcast, or whatever
Yeah.
kind of page. And it's like, there's no I just don't think there's coincidences. I think these things are put in people's paths to help them, and whatever way
Yeah.
that works in the mad universe that we're in, that
Yeah.
if that's what helps, and like you sharing your story now with me and with everybody listening, you are helping people that are going through a really difficult time, like whether they're about to lose their pet or their pet has died recently or they're still in pain from however many months or years have gone by. Sharing your story is going to be incredible for people and opening up. And even though it was emotional and difficult, I want to thank you for doing that because it is hard. I mean, I've done it for months, and it still gets hard sometimes to go on the podcast and
Yeah,
just let
no,
everything out. Yeah. Yeah.
I've never done anything like this, but I'm more than happy to do it. Like for two reasons. Like one of them is kind of selfish because I feel like it's a way of celebrating Duck, and I feel like the timing of it is good because it's
Mm.
coming up to the 1 year. But also, I genuinely got so much from listening to other people
Mm.
talk about theirs and listening to you talk about your experience with grief.
Mm.
That I'm like, okay, like if it helps anyone, like I would be more than happy because it just really, really helped me finding people's stories and talking, listening, pure strangers, but like
Mm.
just kind of going, okay, right, okay, like this is okay to feel this way. Like I'm not,
Mm.
some alien. and just
No.
connect with like-minded people because I just feel like, yeah, it's people, everyone feels things differently, not, so it's nice to connect with people that are
Mm.
have gone through the same thing. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm more than happy. So thank you so much for having me on because
Mm.
in a way it is like it's also probably will help with the processing of things. Like I don't speak about Duck to anyone. Um, I speak about him really openly on the Instagram page because I think that's because like it's not my name. It's like I have the dog's names on it.
Mm.
And in a way that helps. And I'm like, okay, everyone that's following me on this or I follow them, like they're like-minded. So
Mm.
I don't, I've written about it and expressed things I've spoken about now on Instagram posts, but I've never
Mm.
verbally sat down with any of my friends or family and spoken like this. So
I feel in a privileged position. So thank you. And I have read so many of your posts and watched some of your videos on your page on Instagram, and I have just resonated with so much. And you're so vulnerable and honest, and that can be difficult. But when it's on a page, like you say, and it's
I've
not your
gone from being
face,
one extreme to the other.
yeah, it's
I used to be
amazing.
very, very different. I used to be totally, I wouldn't even be able to name how I was feeling
Yeah.
years ago. So it's gone one extreme to the other, but likewise, like the same with your posts, like
Mm.
and it's just social media has its positives, I think. I know it has many negatives, but I think
Yes. Yeah.
it connects people as well.
Mm. And for anyone who's interested in following your Instagram page, I can link it below in the show notes. And if you feel guided to connecting with Lisa and after listening to her wonderful story with Duck, then of course, I mean it can help so many people to just feel that connection, I think. But I think, oh my God, the time has just flown by because I could stay
Sorry,
chatting to
I've
you for
rambled.
another
I warned
hour.
you, I ramble. You know how
It's
to
it's
talk.
it's actually been like for the first time of having a guest on my podcast, it's been such a wonderful experience for me because sometimes I get sick of kind of rambling myself and going what did I just talk about? But it's been so just amazing to hear you be vulnerable and talk about Duck and for me to just listen. And I had a list of questions, but you had been answering them all the way.
Sorry.
No,
Yeah, yeah,
you were
yeah.
answering all of the questions I had all the way through. So I just felt that I was just enthralled by listening to your story. And I think you've answered so much and helped people resonate with so much on this. So thank you so much for doing the scary thing of saying yes to come on the podcast because I so appreciate it. And
I'm
yeah, thank you for joining me.
delighted, more than happy. And thank you for everything you do because you're helping a lot of people. You mightn't be speaking to everyone directly, individually, but you're reaching a lot of people
Thank you,
that need
Lisa.
it.
Thank you. That means the world to hear that.
It's so important what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up this episode, because today is Black Friday, there is a special offer on my pet loss workshops, 50% off on my website. If anybody has resonated with this podcast, needs some support coming up to Christmas, these are self-paced. You could do them in your pajamas at home. And there's lovely pet loss meditation and brand new journal prompts that goes with those workshops. So if you're guided to do that, the link is in the show notes. But yeah, we'll we'll leave it there. And all that remains to be said is take care and thank you, Lisa.
You're most welcome. Thank you.